A lot of people are struggling with inflation still, and they have a lot of intersectional identities that are actively under attack. So if it's appropriate for your organization and mission aligned to do so, I would say keep fundraising. If it's not, and for example, you digitize a collection of books and it's not a very pressing time for you to start fundraising and you're not as big of a risk, then it's a good time to start doing some advocacy and collaboration with some organizations that are most at risk.
Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to be here today with Maria Rio. Maria, welcome to What the Fundraising.
Woo, happy to be here.
Let's start with you just introducing yourself to everyone. Tell them a little bit about you, what brings you to our conversation today.
Great. So my name is Maria Rio. My pronouns are she and her. And I've actually been fundraising for, I think, like 14 years. It's getting up there. I started as a face-to-face fundraiser for a company called Public Outreach. So I don't know if they're in your neighborhood, but basically in my neighborhood, it's all about wearing the vest and like stopping people to do like a quick monthly giving pitch. So I did that for 4.5 years for 11 different clients. And after that, I just like got into nonprofit proper. As a former service user, I felt like I really had a really unique story to tell. And that's what I've tried to do. So really focus on how we treat our community, how we design programs, how we talk to our donors, how we position our organizations is all really, really interesting to me. And I think that we're aligned in a lot of ways. So I'm so excited to be here. Just one more thing about me is I run my own fundraising consultancy called Further Together. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, right? And I'm also the host of the Small Nonprofit Podcast. So this is a really interesting worlds colliding for us.
I know. I love it. And I mean, I follow your writing on LinkedIn and stuff too, and always feel so aligned with the different topics that you talk about from the relationship-based perspective and the ethical fundraising perspective and thinking about donor behavior and fundraiser behavior and all the sort of cognitive psychology components. So it's going to be very hard to like keep us to our time limit here today. But I'm curious, so thinking about all of those things coming together we're in a moment where I feel like all the playbooks we've had in nonprofit previously are feeling, whether or not they are completely upended, are feeling upended given the current like political and economic environment. And I'm finding myself like kind of revisiting some of the tactical strategies that I've given nonprofits in the past and thinking about like, okay, how do I kind of rewrite those for the moment that we're in? Not to like, gosh, there's got to be a better saying than throw the baby out with the bathwater. But like, I'm like, what's a better way of saying that phrase? But like finding basically the application of the things, of the tools that we do feel like are effective, but current climate. And I'm curious, like, I know you focus a lot on giving really actionable advice for fundraisers. So like, what is some of the core guidance that you're giving people in the moment that we're in?
I feel like this really reminds me of fundraising through COVID. And a thing that people did then that I don't want them to repeat now is to like stop fundraising. So at the time, they were like, it's an appropriate time to ask. Like people don't have money, X, Y, and Z. Well, let me tell you, that's always the case. A lot of people are struggling with inflation still, and they have a lot of intersectional identities that are actively under attack. So if it's appropriate for your organization and mission aligned to do so, I would say keep fundraising. If it's not, and for example, you digitize a collection of books and it's not a very pressing time for you to start fundraising and you're not as big of a risk, then it's a good time to start doing some advocacy and collaboration with some organizations that are most at risk. My top tip though for all organizations of any size is to pause. We naturally come into this thing called action bias, where we want to move things forward. We want to do things that make us feel busy and that makes us feel like we're in control. And doing something is not actually strategic, right? It's just busy work. So if you're sending really long emails to your major donors saying like, please, like we're in trouble, is that the most strategic way that you can approach that relationship? And most of the time, the answer will be no. So the first thing to do is take a step back, take a deep breath, get a hold of your financials, and then strategize. Don't just like start posting on social media like we're desperate for donations, blah, blah, blah. Like that could be a great strategy, but make sure that it's strategic instead of reactive.
Okay, so there's this piece of what you're saying here that is about sort of consciousness also, right? It's like not just about kind of like, okay, I'm feeling really anxious. I want to feel a higher sense of control. So I'm just going to like spray fire out to everybody right now. So what do you feel like it takes? Like if they're trying, if an organization came to you and said, okay, we know we need to say something to our donors right now. We know there's a lot of wonder or questioning about how this current environment is going to impact our work, or will it impact our work and our funding. We don't have all the answers yet. Like it's going to take us a while to kind of put together a full strategy, but we don't want to wait that long to communicate with them. We want to be intentional. We want to be conscious. How would you recommend they do that?
So I think I would have two strategies. One would be one-to-one and one would be one-to-many. For your one-to-ones, that's usually your larger gifts or your more loyal donors. So those are easier gifts to bring in, right? Well, let's say you're not sure if this person is secretly a Trump supporter or completely against your mission, some other thing. Something that I say is, again, bringing it back to psychology, is you play into those donor personas, right? So you're speaking to someone who has given you money in the past and you say, things are really wild right now. And some donors are kind of like very scared. They don't want to stand up to fascism. They kind of want to put their head in the sand. They just kind of abandon the work and abandon the community. But other donors have really stepped up. They've doubled their giving. They said, I'm all in. They're doing multi-year support. They're saying, like, I believe in the work that you do and I'm going to stand by you. So I'm wondering, like, where you stand in that, right? Because
Yeah.
it's so closely tied to your beliefs, a donor will move to protect their identity, their chosen identity. So they'll move towards, I'm the person that stands with you. I'm not the person that puts my head in the sand. Here's my gift.
Okay, interesting. And I totally agree. I mean, I did this as an executive director when I would get stressed. I would like lean way too heavy on logistics. I'd be like, oh, okay, here, I need to tell you exactly what my step by step like when we think strategy, we're like, oh, we need to tell them like every move we're going to make and every kind of logistical piece to the puzzle, when really you're right. Like the things that matter to them is like, is my identity aligned with how this organization is even thinking about this problem or approaching this problem or talking about the problem? And then they want to validate their identity through their alignment with your organization. So I mean, I'm like sort of taking that away from what you're saying too, which is like, don't overthink, not that you're not being transparent, but the need to share every little micro component, because that's not what is resonating with them anyways.
And also, like, just think about what is your most important thing. The most important thing, if you're doing a fundraising ask, is the ask, right? So, really, you don't want to bury the lead, right? Like, you really want them to understand what the meeting's about and what you're going to be doing, because consent is sexy and they're there for a fundraising conversation. They're not there to listen to the development of your strategic plan. So I always recommend selling the value alignment and not selling the product. And you can see that in advertising and corporate world all the time. They're not selling like, drink this very toxic can of Coke. They're saying like, people who drink Coke are cool. Like they do sports, they do X, Y, and Z, right? So you're selling that like identity, that future vision that you share versus like each aspect of like your own leadership or of your teams.
Yeah. So if you had folks, I mentioned this before we hit record, that folks are feeling so like stressed and maybe scattered and overwhelmed, that I'm hearing from more fundraisers than ever that they're sort of sitting at their computer just paralyzed to take action. And I know we talked a little bit about like, we don't want to just be reactive. We don't want to have that sort of just action bias because it helps us feel a sense of control. We don't want to do that, at least in a way that then is sort of irresponsible around our communications or our relationships. But I'm curious if you have any strategies around like just being able, like helping people sort of get into motion, right? If they're like, okay, being strategic, like I can't even access that part of my brain because I feel like every day I try to create a new plan, something changes. And so they're sort of like grit, like holding tight and holding back from wanting to go into planning mode. What is something that is sort of always safe to do, always beneficial to do, no matter what?
So the first thing that you have to do is put on your own air mask before you can help others, right? So if you're feeling like completely overwhelmed and can't take a step forward, then I would suggest you listen to that. Take a step back, recharge your spiritual, physical, mental energy. Other people will pick up the mantle, right? Because there's been times where I've been completely terrified over the past 3 months and I'm a little bit quieter, but there's other people out there who they're feeling very energized at that point. And when they kind of are less energized, like you're back and ready at full energy to do the work that needs to be done. So that's one aspect. The other one would be continuous storytelling. That's always appropriate. That's always helpful. That always aligns impact. That always aligns with what your donors are looking to hear and what your community wants to talk about. So, actual storytelling and listing out the problem, result, and impact of what you're trying to do, right? So, problem, solution, result, impact of what you're trying to do. Focus on one problem. Don't focus on every problem under the sun right now because there's too many. Make it measurable, right? Make it not a drop in the bucket. Make it something that they understand and they can solve. So you're not solving cancer, you're buying this child like Justin Bieber sheets while they're in the hospital. Like it feels a lot more measurable and specific, right? We always know about SMART goals. So telling stories that offer one problem, one solution, a result in an impact, long-term impact is always, always appropriate and always welcome.
So I really appreciate this. And there's something that's coming up for me here around like the difference between too much logistical complexity that I was talking before versus operational transparency. So I've talked a lot in different speaking things about how we can build trust by bringing people into micro moments. So I feel like one of the biggest pressures that's on us as organizations is to be able to show impact, like achieving our full mission, right? It's like we're working on huge issues that $25 is not solving a crisis in your community. Like we need to be honest about that. But one of the ways I feel like we let people in around impact and really like walk with them through our impact stories is through operational transparency. And I'm curious, like kind of how you think about this. One example I give a lot is actually not a nonprofit example, but is like ride share apps. So I live outside of San Francisco. So I remember when Uber started. And when Uber started, like you would call a number and you would see if an Uber car was going to show up. And you would wait. And maybe after 10 minutes, you'd be like, I don't think my call went through. And you'd call again. And you'd be like, hey, like, is a car actually coming? And then you'd wait another 10 minutes and you'd see. And now those rideshare apps, you open the app, you see where all the cars are around you. You request a car. It tells you 1 minute until we connect you with your driver. Then it shows you where your driver is. It shows you the whole route until it comes and picks you up. And the whole time it's updating your arrival time. I think about that process, and what it's doing is it's building trust with us, right? It's building trust with us that the car is coming. We are going to get to our location on time. And so I'm often thinking about like, how can nonprofits do this? Like, how can they like not become Uber, but how can they build those like micro moments of connection and trust building by telling their donors, here's where we are, here's where we're going, here's how we're getting there in these like without it becoming overly logistical. Does my question make sense?
I feel like there's a lot of ways to like show that impact and show that journey without getting too logistical. And I actually have this piece on my website, like prove your impact 5 ways to quantify the unquantifiable. Because same thing with my cancer example, right? You're not always going to have like we ended cancer stories today, right? So yeah, I think getting and sharing stories is really helpful in doing that. Showing the work. So a lot of people will resort to stock images if they don't have something that they immediately think of. But you can take a picture of your desk. Like there's like little things that show the work being done. You can talk to your partner organizations and bring in their stories and their pictures. You could take pictures of your volunteers or your staff, right? Another thing that you could do is do like pre and post program surveys as well. So you can quantify at least part of the journey. Like it's not reducing social isolation 100%, but at least part of the journey and celebrate those wins as they happen.
Okay, you brought up something in that I'm curious about. I can imagine, because of the scarcity mindset in this sector in general, but especially right now when things are feeling like there's increasing need and perhaps less support in certain areas, this idea of like competition. And I remember I wrote about this in my book, like getting in trouble one time when I was on a donor call and I talked about something one of our partner organizations was doing, like, with us and sharing a little bit. My boss got so mad at me, like how I ruined it because now this donor was going to go and support this organization too, and da 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 da. And I know I'm not the only one who's been reprimanded for something like that. How do we support organizations? Like, I think we're probably aligned in this, that like collaboration and coordination is more important than ever. It's also something our donors want. Like the data shows that our donors want us to be working together, and most donors support 5 to 7 organizations anyway. So it's not a like if then situation, but how do you support organizations to like adopt that mindset?
It's funny. I had a conversation with Roz Stavros from C3, and she talked about this in the podcast episode that we did together, but about how some of the organizations that she was working with, they were sharing like one HR person between the 3 of them and sharing that cost, right? And sharing like the cost of putting on an event and bringing all their donors together to like build community. But I think that people who are into competition, like they're already losing. Like, who are you competing against? A food bank? A children's charity? Like, what a loser. Also, your boss sounds super stable, you know?
Totally.
Yeah, very normal. But yeah, like, it's just like when you're thinking about competition, you're not thinking about community. And it's not kind of the people that I want to be around, right? Competition doesn't help our service users. Actually, working together does. And offering those holistic supports, because everyone has such an intersectional identity, that trying to address piecemeal things is what got us into this mess in the first place.
Do you have any advice for like somebody who is in a position like mine where they have to manage up to a leader to help them get out of their own scarcity mindset?
Yes, but it sounds like with your particular boss, they might have been a little bit of a micromanager or a bully,
Yeah.
which are the hardest people to manage up. If you're not completely confident in yourself and in your like self-worth and self-esteem, that could be a very dangerous game. So tread lightly, document, take screenshots, make sure that you email back whenever they say something. Like, I had this boss, he's like, "Can you send every blog post that we put up to Josh from the media?" I'm like, "Who's Josh? Does he have a last name? What media? Why are we sending him blog posts?" Right? And he got really upset. So just like always ask questions and put it in writing. Those are kind of my biggest tips. For people who micromanage or bully, the biggest thing that they have over you is like this feeling of control and this feeling of making you feel bad. So if they can't do that, they'll move on.
Interesting. Yeah, that's really good advice. And they were a total bully. Really horrible in so many different ways, that being one of them. But I agree. And I feel like now more than ever, I love hearing those stories about the events and organizations coming together and doing things together. I mean, I think there is like clearly donors want that too. And I think it says a lot about the confidence of an organization to demonstrate their partner organizations and to say, like, here are the specific and particular areas where our organization is critically important to this ecosystem. And this whole ecosystem working together helps us achieve all of our connected goals.
That's something that I've been thinking about with the community piece, because Canada Helps, they're a large like CRM platform here in Canada, released a study earlier this year that said like donors who feel community will actually donate more and more often. So I wonder how nonprofits can actually use that information to build communities. So whether that's participation ribbons every time they show up to something, like a volunteer shift, or like a monthly donor cohort that actually has a space to talk to each other.
Yes. Well, that's really interesting because that's another thing I've been recommending recently is like virtual opportunities for donors to come together and even talk about some of the challenges that the organization is facing, or, that the organization can help facilitate without having all of the answers, but saying, hey, we want to come together in community and talk about this. We want to share how we're thinking about it. We want to hear how you all are thinking about it, because I totally agree. I mean, community, belonging, connection, that identity piece that you were talking about earlier, it's like, this is how I feel like this time, as much as ever, if not more than ever, we're really trying to figure out like, who are our people? Like, who are our people? Where do we belong? And then those are the places we're going to invest in, because there are homes.
I do want to say that nonprofits usually are not able to find who their people are because they're not willing to say what they believe out loud. So, how are you going to find people who have similar beliefs if you're not speaking their language, right? And you're not going to spots that they hang out because you're not even thinking of them. You're thinking of, like, I want to target the general public. Why? The general public sucks. Target your specific audience, right?
Totally. Right. Yes. If you are bland, like, you are for nobody. Like, if you try to be something for everybody, then you ultimately are for nobody, and you are bland in a way that nobody can remember who you are and what you stand for. And yeah, it's scary sometimes to be bold and to get that mean email or whatever it is. I've plenty of them over the years, but it's like, my people know that they are my people. And yeah, once in a while, somebody ends up on that list that probably shouldn't have been there in the first place. And good thing we know that. So there's no surprise later.
Plus, if they self select out, it gives you more time with the people who want to go
Yes.
deeper.
Yes. Yes. 100%. 100%. I mean, I feel like no. And like, that's such sacred clarity. You know what I mean? It's like, thank you for being so clear about like who you are and the fact that we are not aligned, because it gives me the ability, exactly to your point, to focus on the people I am in alignment with. And every organization has plenty of those people. What they need is help prioritizing and sort of understanding who's really there for the right reasons and who's really aligned with them.
But also, like, it feels kind of like a bait and switch from the charity side. Like, oh yeah, you're cool enough, give us your money. And then actually my values don't align at all with the organization, right? And like, you just took my money and let me give you my money when you knew that I'm completely unaligned.
Wow, that's a really important point that I don't think actually gets talked about enough, because that's the other thing, right? We want, after we make a gift, to have our identity revalidated that we made the right decision. And what a bad experience to feel like I was duped or I made the wrong decision. And yeah, at that speed, we could have a whole other episode around like kind of the critical nature of like marketing and fundraising practices being aligned. So there's no quote unquote acquisition tool that is misaligned with then ultimately the donor community at large that we're cultivating and supporting.
Yeah, I'm a fan of being like who you are very loudly. I know it's not always the safest, and I did move out of in-house roles to be able to do this. But still, like, even if you can offer resistance to any of the things that are happening poorly, even if you can jam up the gears a little bit, like, I think that that's helpful.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, I could talk to you forever, but I feel like we've given folks some really, really great takeaways for right now. I'm so grateful for your time. Where should folks go to follow along, subscribe to your podcast, all the things, and check out that blog you mentioned too?
So that blog post will be on gofurthertogether.ca. You'll also find the small nonprofit podcast episodes listed there. I'm most active on LinkedIn though, so if you want those daily practical gems of what you can do to improve your fundraising, governance, communications, that's where you can find me. And currently, I'm in a competition with 38 other consultants to see who can grow our LinkedIn following the most. So please help me.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love a good challenge like that. That's so fun.
I'm like in 7th. I need help.
Okay, so definitely go follow Maria on LinkedIn, share her page with everybody so that we can help her get this bump.
Awesome. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom today. I'm so grateful.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm excited to have you on my podcast.
I can't wait. I can't
Yay.
wait.